Thank you very, very much for joining us. And thank you, Ashley, for taking the time out to be with us. I know it's 9 o'clock in the morning where you are. Got up bright and breezy. Thank you very much for joining us.
Of course, thank you.
She's been described as a smart, determined, knowledgeable, and simply one of the best in her field. Ashley has done what many track and field coaches even aspire to do. Ashley was the coach, well, she is the coach of the 2019 world champion in the men's shot put. Plus, she was the men's coach for Team USA at the 2019 world championships. Joe Kovacs' 22.91 final throw at those world championships was a combination of hard work and incredible focus, driven by Ashley and her insatiable drive to win. Ashley's record speaks for itself, and she'll be speaking with us about how she maintains that focus and how she continues to beat the path of its success for her collegiate athletes and senior international stars while staying true to herself. So welcome, Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for having me. I appreciate being here.
Oh, that was an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you. So yeah, Ashley, I just wanted to really put all your hard work. It's an amazing accomplishment. World champion, continent champion, 2 world championship qualifiers, 2 NCAA champions, very recently added to that total in the last couple of weeks. 63 national points. I mean, the list goes on and on, right down. We've got conference champions, records, athletes of the year. It's consistently impressive. And I very much, I like to see consistency. This kind of one-hit wonders, all great, but can you do it again and again and again? So this just speaks for itself. As I said in the introduction, you've got 2 master's degrees, not 1, you've got 2. And you have been, your coaching journey has been phenomenal. So yeah, I don't even know how to phrase this. How do you build a body of work like this over your time period? What would you say? How have you managed to be so successful?
Well, one of the things that, you and I had talked about, like my journey in general, and it's kind of weird even for me at this point in my career. Like, I feel like I kind of just started, but I guess I've been in it for 10 years now. So I guess I'm well on my way in my journey at this point, but it really feels still kind of like new. I knew when I was in high school, like that I wanted to be a college coach. That was something that I had even said to college coaches when I was getting recruited, and they would ask me what I wanted to be or what I wanted to major in. And I said, I wanted to coach, and it became kind of like a thing between me and my mom. My mom would, what are you going to major in? What are you going to do? And she's a teacher. And I said, Mom, I'm going to be a coach. And she's like, well, what are you going to major in for that? So it was something that I always knew that I wanted to do. And I always figured that I would, so when I started out, I was a graduate assistant. And I was at Murray State University for 1 year as a graduate assistant, and I was, just out of college. And then I was at Western Kentucky University, which is a smaller university in the state of Kentucky, and I was there for 2 years. And then I was hired at Ohio State, which is definitely one of the biggest schools in the United States. So, I feel like once I got to Ohio State, I felt like I had all the resources and I had such a big brand behind me that there was really no excuse for me not to do really, really well. So that was kind of like the only option I gave myself. So it kind of just ran from there. And I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of really great athletes, and that they developed into really great people while they were there. And it's been really fun so far. And every year it's just, trying to just add more layers to it. And I feel like I'm on my way to doing that. So I'm excited about where the journey's been so far, and I'm excited, where it can go.
Okay, absolutely. And I know when we spoke, it was last month now, you were very descriptive about and proud of the athletes that you had in your team and the environment in which you coach at the moment at Ohio. How much of an impact has that had on your coaching journey, having a squad or a team that's all moving in the same direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things. Like, I think that kind of boils down to culture. And from my experience, culture is something that takes some time to develop. So I think that, like, as things started to build and as we had success, we were able to attract people that were interested in having that type of success. And when you see success around you, I think that the buy-in is pretty high. So you don't bring someone in and they're questioning what you're doing. They just immediately are kind of like bought into the system and really invested in the things that you say. And they're willing to kind of follow your path. And I think that, you know, right now at Ohio State, I'm kind of seeing the body of work. You know, I've been there for 7 years now, and it's kind of like, you know, becoming a well-oiled machine. And I have a system of the way I need things to be done. And I have a certain type of person that I think we need to have in the group to be successful. You can be a little bit more selective once you've had some success. So I think that all that stuff plays into like the atmosphere and just like a culture of demanding success.
Absolutely. I know from an athlete perspective as well, when you're surrounded, your peers are all striving and pushing and achieving, it really does help. It just raises the bar. It's like, oh, that's what's expected. There's no kind of questions around what you're here to do. It's like, okay.
Right, 100%.
Right, absolutely. So with this, I've put believing in yourself. When we were talking previously, your focus and drive, it's encompassing of those who support you and those who have alternate opinions, should we say, those who have different motivations and are not necessarily as positive. I really, really liked that you said, well, if they're not supporting me, I don't care for their opinions. It's just like, well, the opinions don't really affect me because that's just how I am. And it's something that self-belief that struck me. I was like, that the women who are very successful generally tend to have a lot of that. It's okay, if you're with me, you're with me. If you're not, just keep it moving. How have you developed that over time, that self-belief?
You know, I think that like one of the big things for me, people ask me a lot, like what it's like to be a woman in a male dominated field. And I think the track and field in general, I mean, obviously is male dominated, but like in the throws specifically, which is kind of my whole world, like there are very, very few female throws coaches. And the honest reality of that for me is like, I don't really think about that often. I'm just trying to do my job. And I think that is what it all boils down to. And like, when I say like, I don't like, I remember like an example of a coach that I know that's actually like, you know, he's like kind of a well-known coach in the United States. And he said, I was eating dinner with him and he said something to me like, I know what all the coaches think about you. Do you want to know what they all think about you? And I was just like, I really don't care, you know, what they all think about me. And the reason that I said that, I meant that, but the reality of it for me is like, I'm doing my job. If I'm getting my job done at the level that I expect to get it done at, and I'm above reproach. I think that's the biggest thing. Like if I'm treating the kids well, if I'm treating other people well, if I'm a respectful competitor, not being a good person, being the type of person that I'm, you know, proud to look at in the mirror at the end of the day. If I'm doing all those things and I'm working hard and, you know, like that gives me confidence in what I'm doing. So outside of that, and not to say that if my boss or somebody has constructive criticism for me that I'm like, I don't care what you think. That's not the case at all. I'm just saying if someone has a problem with my success or with what, you know, with what I'm doing with my group, if it's not constructive to move us forward, like I'm not going to let that, you know, beat me up. And I think that, you know, the point that you had made about women, I think that in my experience, I feel like sometimes women are more concerned than some men about how they're portrayed by others. And I don't know if that's like just something I missed along the way, but that's never really been something that I've struggled with. And so I can't really necessarily like relate to that. I remember like a year ago, I was working out at it was like a group class. And I don't know if you guys have this in the UK, but it's called Orange Theory Fitness. here in the United States. And it's like, I think you guys do actually have Orange Theory Fitness, but basically like it's a workout room and there's like 3 different things, like jogging and like rowing. And then there's a weight section. And like, I'm in the weight section and I remember like looking around the room and like just wondering to myself, like, these people probably know that I'm not like a normal, like a normal person. Like I've done something athletic because I could do all the weight room stuff. Like I knew how to do it. And I remember like thinking to myself, like, well, I wonder what these people think, like what do they think? Like, why does that girl know how to do all these exercises that are like weird that most people don't know how? And I remember thinking to myself, like, I never am in a room and look around the room and be like, I wonder what these people think about me. And then it hit me a little bit because I started thinking about like other people that I know and even like, my friends that I feel like they think about that stuff all the time. What do these people think about me? And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that I don't do that more often, but, I feel like my main focus is just, being who I want to be and not in like a way that I'm proud of, in a very like carrying myself above reproach. And if I'm doing that, I feel like that's all that I can do. And then, people can form opinions around that. So it's not like I don't care like what anybody thinks about me. It's just like, well, I'm going to do my best to try to be the best version of myself, and the judgment that I receive from that, like, I feel like I deserve it one way or another. So if it's good, then that's good. And if it's not positive, then if it's something constructive you can bring to me, I would definitely like to work on that. But, it's not going to define me if I'm living in a way that I'm proud of.
Absolutely. I always think that you can't control what other people think about you. You can only control yourself and make yourself happy. So I really, when we've spoken, I thought, you know what, she's got it spot on. I really liked it. It was just like, okay, you concern yourself with people who have the best of intentions for you. And that's that. So here we've got stepping up. So obviously your journey from junior to senior athletic success. I suppose, like you said, you always wanted to be a coach, and you've now been in it for 10 years. How have you found that transition, rising up through the ranks? And now that you're literally at the top of your game, how have you found that transition, using mentors, sponsors, anybody that can support you on your journey? How have you managed to transition?
Yeah, I definitely think that it's a process. I think that when I look back on who I was and how I was when I first started out, and then the way that I am now and the things that I know now, I can definitely see the transformation. I like to quantify things, as much as I can. Like in the beginning of the year, I have goals of like for like professional development goals, and then team goals, like individual athlete goals, and just like things in the back of my head that I know I want to get better at, and then at the end of the year, I like to evaluate like, how did the year go? And then also like, did I do the things that I wanted to do from a personal and professional development standpoint to advance myself? And like, for me, if you aren't challenging yourself in that way to continue to develop and continue to learn more and push your boundaries and become innovative, like very quickly you can fall behind. So, I've really like, I think that's extremely important. Like every year I would try to, get a certification, or, I started working on the second master's, or, like I had told myself that I wanted to do a little bit more some sports science stuff. And there's a big sports scientist at Ohio State that's kind of like world renowned. And I sat down with him, I emailed him and I asked if we could talk, and just meeting people, that might not be like doing exactly what I'm doing, but people that are experts in their field, and using them. I think that you can learn something from everybody, in conversation. And I try to approach all my interactions that way. Like, I definitely don't think that I know that I don't know everything about anything, and so I think that I know there are some things that I know pretty well, but I think that the second that you start thinking you know it all, or the second you start thinking that you don't need to learn, or that you don't need to go to that conference or hear that person talk, or whatever it is, you can digress very quickly, and so, for everybody that's here, I mean, I think that, I can learn something from anybody that's in this presentation right now that throws out a question, maybe poses something different to me that I haven't thought about before, and you leave and you're kind of like, I liked that, or I didn't think about it that way, or I'm glad that person asked me that question because it made me reflect, so I think that, just taking your surroundings and your opportunities to learn and using them to elevate yourself, I think that that's extremely powerful. And like, I'm not trying to be like stereotypical one way or another about men and women, but I think that I think sometimes some of the men that I've worked with, especially as they've gotten like deeper into their career, it's like, this is the way it is. And this is how I do things. And, and also like, aren't as willing to ask for help or like go outside of like, I feel like that's scary for people. That's not like scary for me. I think that comes from a place of strength, and learning more is going to strengthen me. So I think just continuing to be a student of the sport and continuing to try to just keep moving the dial little by little. And you'll be really surprised where you end up if you keep doing that year after year.